do you see any major differences between hiring process in big tech companies like Amazon or Apple or Google or versus the smaller companies?
What you're actually assessing them for is that do they have the technical mindset? Do they have the capability to understand the concepts? Do they understand a programming language? Or if you're going for a system design interview, let's say, you're trying to figure out if they can think of the whole system and think of at least the high level components, and depending on the level of the job is.
Do you think that interview process in smaller companies can be more biased?
When I talked about some roles like doctors, it gave me the example of men.
Yeah.
And very quickly, it talked about nurses, and they appeared as females. Right? There was a long conversation me and GPT were having, and consistently, it failed my expectations drastically.
Do you have any ideas how people can try out management? Because
number one is to...
Today, the guest is Shalini Goyal. She has over 20 years of experience in software industry. Right now, she's a software engineering manager at Amazon. And before, she was a VP of software development at JP Morgan. She's also a speaker and a top voice on LinkedIn, talking about hiring as well. And the last post I think was about system design, which was super interesting. And she's also a coach and a mentor. Have I missed anything or?
No, I think you're bang on. You covered everything so well. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'd like to start with, I think, one of your areas of expertise, so hiring in general.
Okay.
So how do you see the hiring process being relevant to actual job being done by people at work? Especially in bigger companies, the process is often like interview loops, and we have system design, we have lead code exercises. How relevant do you think it is to the actual work being done?
Okay. I think that's a fab question, especially because many times I hear from people, especially the ones who are actually getting into the job market and trying to find something for themselves, saying that the interview process doesn't make sense. The job is something completely different, so it doesn't match. And, many times we crib a lot about this. The complete hiring process is actually created in the way that interviewers, the company, can assess your skills, either it's technical, behavioral, culture fit, your communication, whatever it is. Okay. So the combination of all of your skills are actually suitable for that role. Nobody has seen you doing that role yet. And this is why that hiring process sits in between you and the job to see if you're actually capable of doing that. Now, there are various things which come into play because it's not completely a myth, when you interview a person for their technical skills, let's say, I don't think it is necessary that they would be able to answer 100% of your technical questions. Right. What you're actually assessing them for is that do they have the technical mindset? Do they have the capability to understand the concepts? Do they understand a programming language? Or if you're going for a system design interview, let's say, you're trying to figure out if they can think of the whole system and think of at least the high level components, and depending on the level of the job as well, right? If you're applying for a principal engineer job, then you really have to have a good solid grip of the system design. But if, let's say, you're going for SDE2 level, junior engineer kind of level interview, and you're appearing for system design, then most probably the interview is just trying to assess how much you have really learned about the systems you have been working on. Do you understand how the architectures are built? The components play the role in there. So having said that, the way the entire process works, in my view, is to assess your overall fit for the given job. It's not to grill you. It's not to just sit there and, see, oh, you know this or you don't know that. It's not a judgment being made on the candidate. It's a process to ensure that you can do the job right. Or when you join the job, you don't feel like, oh, what is it? You should have, and candidate should also get a fair idea from the interview process what the job's gonna be, which they're getting interviewed.
Because that company has spent a lot of time making the whole process reliable, whatever, for them, for hiring managers and so on. Do you think people are educated enough to make sure that the company is also a good fit for them, or are they usually less prepared?
I think they're not. It's a very valid and different question you have asked, Michael. Most of the time when candidates apply for the jobs, they are less worried about the company culture. And even many times I see the kind of role they're applying for. They're not educated about that, and they are probably not even considering that they should. So being a candidate, I would think you should definitely look at the kind of company you would like to work for, the company culture, the kind of growth you can get there in your role you're applying for. And think a bit of long term if possible. You don't want to switch company every 2 years or so. I know that the new generation actually loves to switch companies frequently than the generation I came from, or I'm coming from. I feel a bit older while I'm saying this, but not every 2 years. You want to grow a bit in the organization, and it takes some time. When you join a new firm, if you think about it, it takes some time before you settle down, before you understand what's going on around you. You learn the domain, you learn the project, you learn what you're trying to achieve, and everything you put together. So you come to a level of performance. You gradually build on it. So it takes some time before you actually are really performing well in the organization. So think long term a little bit. How are you going to grow in your role? Do you want vertical growth or maybe horizontal? Maybe you want to learn more technology. Maybe you want to, get promoted to the next level.
Yeah.
So think all those aspects as well when you're applying for a job.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you in a second how it differs, the possibilities and the hiring process in big and smaller companies, because I think after some level it's harder to grow in the smaller companies. But before that, what you said about people switching jobs now more often, I think that if there is no company in your resume that you have been like for 4 years at least, and you are at more senior levels, it's very hard for me to understand how have a given person been able to understand the outcomes of the decisions they've made, right? Because it's often takes years to see the actual outcome, either on tech level or on culture or management, whatever it is, it often takes years. How do you see the possibilities for growth, and how do you see differences in hiring process between a smaller and bigger companies?
Right. So if we talk about the growth in a small or a big company, I think it is extremely dependent on you instead of the company. In a small company, you can quickly get the vertical growth. That happens quite a lot. You can, get one promotion, then the second, and the next one, because it's a small company, so people can see you more. You're much more visible than you would be in a big company, let's say, right? But if you talk about working in a big tech organization, then it is also quite possible that while you are not getting promoted every couple of years, you're learning quite a lot. You are in between highly smart people, maybe. You are learning how to contribute to large scale projects, how to connect with different clients. There could be a number of different learning opportunities present there because it's a large company we're talking about. So the growth may look a bit different company to company. It's not necessarily limited to a small company or a big company, I would say. So it's largely dependent on you, what kind of growth you are looking for, and what kind of opportunities you take, you create, and go for them.
Yeah, that's very interesting take about the being able to grow vertically in the leveling. Do you see any major differences between hiring process in big tech companies like Amazon or Apple or Google, or versus the smaller companies?
I can speak from my personal experience, and I think the difference I have felt and gone through when it comes to interviewing for a big tech company, they are very set standards. They're not thinking, once they have got your resume, they're not thinking, oh, who would or how would we organize the interview, or what rounds the person would go through, or how many interviews there should be. There is a set process from the beginning till the end, right? In my own experience, if I talk about Amazon or I talk to Facebook as well, the first step is your resume selection, and then very quickly you get a response from the recruitment team, and somebody connects with you to actually explain you the entire process. While if you talk about any other smaller organization, without naming any organization, I think the process is a bit fluid over there. Anyone can pick your resume. It could be your hiring manager, or it could be your HR, somebody in the recruitment, and you can hear from any of them, right? Then the second difference, in my view, for if we're trying to compare, is in the big tech organization, the candidates are well informed about each step which is they're gonna go through, and each type of interview they would appear for. Whereas if we talk about these small organizations, many a times candidates appear for the interview and they don't even know what they're going to talk about. There is a lot of ambiguity around the interview, so it's hard to prepare for success. While at the same time, if you're appearing for a big tech company interview, they want to make sure that they are setting you up for the success. I was amazed by Amazon's interview process. That was my first time when I was appearing for any big tech organization's interview, and the way recruitment team prepared me, I was like, it seems that you are on my side. As a candidate, I was so excited to talk to them because they educated me. They talked about the STAR way of answering the questions, and they suggested to go through the leadership principles and all that. So it felt like it was part of the preparation. So while you prepare your own self without knowing much, when you are going for a small organization, let's say, to mid, when you go to the big tech organizations, there comes a major difference that you are well aware what you're going to expect in the interview. It's just that they're so extensive that it's hard to crack.
Do you think that you mentioned that you are not sure what to expect? Do you think that interview process in smaller companies can be more biased?
It's hard to say, frankly, because I think everyone, either it's a small firm or a medium or I think the size doesn't matter. What matters is how much a firm is investing in their recruitment process and standardizing that, right? There are firms out there who are constantly hiring. It could be because there is a lot of movement in the company, or it could be because of the company growth, right? It could be any reason. But how much their process is standardized and how much they have invested in theirs, that makes a difference. I wouldn't think that they are biased or they are trying to follow the big tech companies, though in some cases, I have to admit, I have noted that, that because let's say Facebook is doing system design interview, so we should also start doing system design interview without knowing what kind of roles you should actually try to do the system design interviews for, or without thinking that what level it should begin, or what kind of information you would get out from that such that it would be useful for yourself. So I think it is about learning what works for you, for your company culture, for your hiring process, and then applying that into your process.
The risk I see, and we mentioned it a little before we started talking, is with standardization and making the process repeatable. I know it ensures that it's less biased, but at the same time, now with AI in general, I see that it can be tricked, or starting with resume screening and sending CVs and cover letters like that. You can AI generate it or align with the advert, and then during, especially in remote setting, right, you can lead code style exercises. You can again use AI to help you go through it. And do you think that the hiring process should adapt to mitigate this risk?
So let's take a step back here. First of all, if we talk about the resumes, it's true that many of the organizations now have auto scanners or ATS systems sitting behind, which actually scans your resume and says pass or fail. So many of the resumes just fall on the floor because they cannot cross the ATS boundaries, right? Is that right? I wouldn't think so. Right? I wouldn't think that anyone who is actually let's say, if we compare two applications, one person is making sure that their resume is going through the ATS. They have ensured everything. I've talked about it in a post, so I'm not going to detail it out. But if it is ATS compliant, let's say, okay, but at the same time, the other person who has not done that, then they should not be given a chance. I don't think so. But then comes the point where if all the organizations are implementing that, then as candidates, every candidate should also ensure to take that step and ensure that their resume is ATS friendly, ATS compliant, can go through that loop. Because no human is looking at you, so they cannot understand. If no human has looked at it, they don't know who you are, what you bring to the table, what your resume speaks for it. So it's a machine sitting behind, which is just bypassing you, thinking you're not good enough. So candidates should be smart, in my view, to actually make sure that the resume crosses that. So companies are right, because there are hundreds and thousands of applications these days for every single role. So they had to apply a mechanism to help them, right? We are turning to be a bit more machine dependent, taking more help from the machines these days. So that's number one. Number two, when it comes to, let's say writing your cover letter with the help of, again, some AI, ChatGPT, or whatsoever you're using, it is still okay, in my view, as far as it is authentic, as far as instead of 10 years, you don't say 15 years of experience, which is a lie, or you're still putting the right information up there to say why I'm interested in that job, or anything you want to convey. If you take a bit of help from ChatGPT to form your sentences, to give it a structure, that's still okay. I still don't consider that as a cheating, unless, again, let's say you are extremely broken in your communication, while you take the help from a GPT and create a beautiful cover letter which catches the eyes of the hiring manager or recruiter, and they say, yeah, this person has written such a great cover letter, I can get it. Because then it sounds like a cheating. Right? You're not what you are appearing to in your cover letter. Then we talk about interviews. So if we talk about the coding interviews, where there is a possibility that in a job where you take an exercise home and then you get asked to submit your work, you can very well take the help of thousands of tools outside, and then you submit your work to the interviewer. While you can do that, and sure, there is a scope of cheating over there, I think the interviewers are quite as smart, and they should be that smart that while they will invite you, let's say they see your code exercise and they say, wow, let's invite this person for the interview. At that point in time, they should be able to see through. It's not that difficult, right? When you cross question on that code, and when you cross question about what they were thinking, what kind of other alternate solutions can be to the problem they have been given, how did they write the test cases, what the use cases they were thinking of, and many other mechanisms which get applied to any coding interview. I think the interviewers are smart enough to figure out if there has been some cheating behind it, or there has been some AI sitting behind this. So this is quite possible. But yes, that's wrong. If that happens, there is no justification to it. If you're trying to get into a software engineering role, a developer role, you got to make sure that you know your stuff.
Yeah.
So a little bit of help is okay, is actually good to take that kind of help because it helps you learning.
Yeah.
As far as it's making you a better person, a better professional, either it's with your code, with your behavioral interview, with your stories, whatsoever, that's good because you're learning constantly. But if you think, oh, it should do my job, it should get me hired, that's where things go wrong.
Yeah. So I have two follow-up questions. So the first one is that about bias, right? Do you think it's because of the automated screening of resumes and that it may start eliminate people based on some criteria which is not objective, especially I assume that more and more of this screening will be done by AI if it's not already. Do you think it's possible?
Yeah, that's a very great question, Michael. So biasness in models does appear, right? But we need to make sure we, as in the people sitting behind those machine learning models, which are actually acting as ATS, scanning the resumes and, marking the candidate as pass or fail. We need to make sure that we have fed them enough data that they do not turn biased. Okay, I'll give you an example. It's been many months actually when I was playing with ChatGPT. I was preparing for a conference to give a presentation, and I was talking about AI. So I was trying to gather some examples for the biasness. And I thought, okay, let me try to get my own examples. I was playing with GPT and I talked about some of the roles. And it did not disappoint me in a sarcastic way. When I talked about some roles like doctors, it gave me the example of men.
Yeah.
And very quickly, it talked about nurses and they appeared as females. Right? There was a long conversation me and GPT were having.
Yeah.
And consistently, it failed my expectations drastically. Gave me great examples, of course, for my conference. So I took the snapshot and everything. But to your point, yes, our GPTs, our machines are going to be biased if we do not feed them the right set of data.
Yeah.
So it is really the job of the people who are sitting behind these systems to make sure that we give them the right set of data, do the corrections, update them, do whatever it takes to make sure that this biasness is addressed.
Yeah. I just had this thought that it's becoming a little bit like antiviruses and viruses kind of scenario where people will be using AI to create the better version that will pass AI checks, and AI checks will not spot that it's AI, and it will be like this vicious cycle where we can get out and we just can eliminate all the humans in the process and be like, yes, that's correct person or not. So that kind of scares me, by the way. I think it's a risky behavior.
Yes, yeah, it is indeed. It definitely is, but I think we are turning to be more and more aware of such issues and trying to address. So hope for the good, I would think.
Yeah, let's hope so. So I've also seen your post about your book you've written, which I understand helps the ICs to be prepared for interviews, especially at big tech. Are there am I right in saying that if someone wants to go in that direction, this would be a good resource for them?
Sure. So I wouldn't say it is specifically for big tech companies or for ICs. Um,
Yeah.
it's a the what it covers basically. Let's talk about that first. Probably that will give a better idea. So the book has four sections mainly. There is one part which is dedicated to system design. Many of the books talk about a number of examples, case studies, etc. But when I was preparing for system design back in my time, I struggled even finding out all of the topics at one place. So what I did in this book is I have taken all of the major topics and I have talked about all of the basics anybody needs to understand to be able to prepare for system design. That's one. The second part of the book focuses on the behavioral aspect, like we were talking about it, right? So how does the star format works? What's the expectation when you go for, let's say, FANG organization? But it's not limited to big tech, like I said.
Yeah.
For it applies to any company.
Yeah.
And there are a number of sample questions to help you prepare and the answers for them, on the basis of which you can prepare your own answer. I highly recommend you do not copy paste the answer from there when you go for the interview. Think
Yeah.
of the story. These are just to help you, what kind of stories you may have from your life, from your experience, and how you can apply them. Then there is a third section, which is especially useful for the people who are at the beginning stage, let's say, who are preparing for DSA. So there is a roadmap, 6 months roadmap, which I have provided to
Yeah.
about kind of a plan which the junior engineers or engineers can follow and understand how they should prepare for the DSA and what all topics again they should cover for the DSA. That's a number one challenge I get from many people. What should we prepare? What topics should we study for? That's one question I always get from so many people on all of these interview types. And the last one is the resources section, where I have given a number of resources, either it's books, websites, YouTube links, where you can go and just, leverage what's out there already.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you anything which is already present out there. So you can take those resources and leverage them to prepare well. So that's the book all about.
Awesome. Thank you. When we have a more junior and more senior person, how the process differs. You mentioned at the beginning that the emphasis is more on the, like, for example, system design for more senior people than for junior position. Are there any major differences that, for example, you are expecting from a person to present when they are applying for senior plus level roles?
Yeah, I think there are, several differences we can point out when it comes to the senior positions, especially let's say the senior engineers, SD2, SD3 kind of level, or the principal engineer, when people reach to those kind of stages. Then the junior ones, let's say people graduate to do some kind of work, 1 year, 2 years of experience, 3 years of experience. The expectation is start to change from there. More senior you become in your role, I think higher the expectation that you would be level-headed. What does that mean? So when you're starting your career, you're largely focused on your data structure and algorithms, DSA, right? Can you code correctly? Do you understand the logic? Do you understand the different algorithms? And can you apply them in your working and using a programming language, which can be any, like Python, Java, .NET, C Sharp, any programming language? Are you able to code something, right? Do you have that kind of technical mindset which you can use and do the coding, basically? That's a primary objective, when people go for the junior engineer
Yeah.
position. Along with that, the ability to think right, your behavior is correct, you're eager to learn, you are eager to work in a team, you have done some kind of team building before in your during your graduation, let's say. Those kind of skills also get assessed with your coding skills. But as you go into the senior roles, more senior roles, the system design, first of all, it gets introduced because the expectation is that you would be able to understand the various systems you can create and the way they are structured, the several components which apply to it, how the databases get used, which one to use. Are you thinking about some non-functional requirement? Let's say, should the system be scalable, reliable? You talk about the security. So a number of things are covered during the system design interviews when the ability is assessed. And then comes the third part, which is actually highly important. And as you go into much more senior positions, that primarily starts to dictate if you're suitable for a position or not, right? And that is the behavioral aspect. That is something, how you actually communicate to your team, how you take the ownership of your work. Are you accountable? You feel accountable for something which is getting delivered. How do you deliver? How do you work with others? I think I said that already. When it comes to team thing, it's quite a big thing. How do you work with others? How do you work with your team? How do you work outside the team with your stakeholders, with your clients? So communication is definitely centered across all of these criteria on which you get assessed. Are you able to think well, in the sense there are difficult situations which present themselves time to time in any organization, in any project. Are you able to think well and provide the right solutions in those situations? Mm-hmm. You're not burning out your team. You're making sure that you can come up with some kind of solutions, some kind of ideas, and go through them. So a number of aspects play in there, where if you again look at we talked about the big tech companies, right? Big tech companies have extreme focus on the values they carry, on the culture they have in the organization. Amazon talks a lot about leadership principle, right? Their interview process is quite a lot arranged or organized around that. Or you talk about Facebook or talk about Google. All of these organizations have their own values and they try to assess you around them. So in the senior roles, it matters a lot how level-headed you are and how much you fit for the company when it comes to culture. Because technical skills can be taught. If you have so many years of experience, if you have the technical skills or abilities depicted, let's say, through system design interview, then that's good enough. You don't need to know everything. And that's another thing. When you reach to the senior levels, you learn a lot to say that I don't know this. Right? People know that you have the ability to figure things out.
That's I agree with your point of view on the behavioral being much more important the more senior you are. Do you have any good ways of checking these behavioral skills during the interview? How well would they behave in the stressful situation, or will they respond, in a more passive-aggressive way or not? Because, during the interview, you're like 120% your best. So do you have any good tips how to assess that?
Yeah, so if we talk about, say, big tech companies, most of them have multiple rounds of interviews where you get assessed just for your behavioral skills. If we talk about, say, small to medium-sized organizations, even I have started to see that there is an increased focus on the behavioral aspects assessments, where candidates go through a number of questions where, by the means of which interviewers try to get the information out and see how you would be fit in the organization. Are you a cultural fit or not? One of the good example I can give you is that, let's say if we talk about a leadership principle, which is called ownership in Amazon, then during the interview, the question would not appear directly that, can you please tell me how you took the ownership of a project? But it can come in a different way where the interviewer is trying to assess that in a difficult situation, do you take the ownership or do you run away from that?
Yeah.
Right? What did you do? What was the situation? Or how did you actually act in that? What was your role in that whole situation?
Yes.
And then what was the outcome of that? Right? So that they can understand. So during my own interview, when I was interviewing for Amazon, it happened so that I gave one example and then my interviewer said, I would like to listen to another example. Do you have something more? Because they did not get the information out from my previous example, right? So I think there are multiple rounds of interviews which actually help the companies to understand the level of the person in terms of their behavioral aspect, in terms of how they're gonna react in different situations, how much they are trustworthy, how much do they do for their team, how they are a good team player, and a lot of different things. Behavior is not just one or two things. There are a number of things on which you can assess the candidates.
Yes. I was I was just thinking that with AI now in general, because from my experience, a lot of the questions are experience based, right? So tell me about an example when you X, whatever. And to make examples aligned with values of a given company, like how to present my examples that are aligned with Meta's company values, right? And then it gives you like, talk about this example in that way and this example in a given way, right? Which is like, again, going back to the previous point of making it hard or harder for me, at least, to get a real understanding of how someone would behave in reality. I don't know.
It is always hard to figure out if the person is stating the whole truth or if there is a made up story. That's true. But again, it is also true that the people who are sitting in the interview panel, they are well skilled, well trained to dig things out. Right? When you are telling me your story, I can ask the deeper questions, which can help me understand if you actually made up this story or were you actually present there. The great thing with truth is that when you are, when you are speaking truth, you can answer the same thing 100 times, and no matter how much detail I would go into, I would know things. Right? When you are cooking up a story, then you can cook it up to a certain level, and after that you start to fail. So this is why there are questions which are helpful to take you further down on the memory lane, ask more about the situation or the experience, or the things which can help the interviewer to understand you were really present there, or if this was really your role to achieve something.
This is a great tactic, and I've used it in most of the interviews where I've been a hiring manager to assess the technical skills of a given person. Like that, for example, a lot of EMs, and it depends on the company, but a lot of EMs do not have a deep technical understanding of the stuff their team delivered. And I often seen in a CV like, we introduced, I don't know, session-based authorization, whatever. And I was like, okay, can you explain me how it worked? And I was digging deep into the details to understand when, their understanding was ending, which I think is a good way, as you said, to understand the truthfulness.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a great way, actually. The one thing I would say on this, that many a times, many of the EMs may not be engaged with their team at a very detailed level. It again depends on company culture and the amount of work they have on their plate. Many of the EMs have like 40, 60 people working for them. And I've seen such examples. I have been at a place where I was crazy with my workload, and I had to discuss with my manager that we can't continue like this, because I feel like I'm traveling in multiple boats at the same time. So I got to choose what my career path is going to look like. So it really depends on the hiring needs, what kind of person you need and how much technical details you need them to know. Um, Most of the EMs have a strong technical background. That's how they've actually made to the EM level. Yeah, the EMs who are, let's say, having just 4 to 5 years of experience, I believe that it is difficult for them to do the justice for both sorts of positions. The IC position of the technical contribution they can make. At the same time, the management contribution, the M part of the EM, the management contribution they can make in the organization or the project.
How do you advise people, or what's your personal experience about choosing to go deeper in IC role path or switching to management?
This question comes a lot whenever I speak to people. I think we never close without this question answered. I think the way to choose is to understand what you love to do, right? What you are passionate about and what you would like to do, let's say, in few years' time, right? If you talk about the individual contributor role, I think it is more focused on your own work. It gives you the liberty to have larger focus on what you need to deliver, go deep into the technology, and keep learning the new technology. It presents a lot of opportunities as well, because you can have the time, have the focus. Whereas if we talk about the management kind of role, I think you got to love to deliver through others. Being in an engineering manager role, I don't think I can ever say I delivered this. It's with my team, right? So when you like to deliver with the help of others, when you like to collaborate more, when you like to talk to stakeholders, when you like to communicate, when you like to see the bigger picture yourself, when you want to say that, I want to know everything about it, right? That's time when you should think that you need a management role, because then you get the chance, the opportunities to get engaged early on, to see the high level pictures, to see what's going on in the organization or levels above you. Whereas if you're an individual contributor, the chances are that you would get filtered information, or you will be more focused on what I need to deliver, the design I need to work on, the architecture piece I need to work on, the delivery I have to give. There comes the major difference, right? So the very first thing, and probably the most important thing over here for any individual before they choose which track to pick up, is to think what I like to do. Okay, more visible you are, more you go in between people, more you are present in meetings, more vulnerable you are. Do you like that? Do you enjoy that? I do. This is why I'm in this kind of role.
So you were mentioning that if you like to make an impact through others, you should stick to management or go into management. And if you want to dig into technical expertise more, to be on the IC track, do you have any ideas how people can try out management? Because it's hard to know, do you want to go in that direction before you actually try it?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of things you can do there. Number one is to start shadowing a person who you think can be a role model or the kind of role they are doing, which you would like to do in the future, or ask your manager if you can start shadowing them and start seeing what happens actually when you will, let's say, kind of take that role. Start going to different meetings, start looking at their work a bit closely. Hope they allow you, right? So discuss that with them, the people openly, and say that this is what I intend to do, but I would like to shadow you first and would like to get a taste of it. And based on that, you can decide if you are really ready for that kind of role. If you like it, or maybe you completely dislike it, depends, right?
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is that if you get presented with an opportunity like that, let's say, then I would say take that opportunity. If it's huge, then it's going to be a huge risk. But if it's a small opportunity, then maybe, just take that and try it out. If it doesn't work, you can always go back, right? I started leading a team of just two people, many years back, like in 2006 or 7. That's how I started. And I started enjoying it. And then I got to know, what are the pros, cons, how would I have to work differently than a current role. So, number of things you learn on the go when you're actually on the job, and then you can decide if it is for you or if it is not. So these are different mechanisms you can try out.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Shalini, so much. I really appreciate your time and that you decided to join and sharing your expertise.
No worries. Thank you so much for inviting me. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, Michael. That was great talking to you.